Okay, ladies and gentlemen, Satan meant it for evil, but God worked it out for good. I had to close out and start all over again. So stay with me. Stay with me. How many of you can hear me? If you can hear me, uh, put on the screen if you can hear me. Let me know if you can hear me. Can you hear me? Those of you who are on the screen. All right, I see you. Tell me if you can hear me. You can hear me? Amen. Okay, let's just give ourselves a little time here. Okay, can you hear me? Yes. All right, let's get back into what we were saying. What was Dorothy's old self-love home base? Everybody just start chatting in the box. Tell me, what was Dorothy's old self-love home base? Don't let Satan distract you from what just happened. That was designed to stop what the message was really all about. What was Satan's, or what was Dorothy's old self-love home base? Satan meant it for evil, but God worked it out for good. Okay, I need y'all to start chatting. What was Dorothy's, what was her home base? As soon as somebody give me an answer, I'll know. What was Dorothy's home base? Okay, I'm going to tell you what her home base is so we can move on. All right, Crystal Smith, you hit the nail on the head. She had a home base of abandonment. We'll talk about that later. Also, hello, it's off completely again. All right, okay. Just text me. Okay. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, how many of you can hear me? I got a message that it was off again. How many of you can hear me? Let me know if you can hear me. Let me know if you can follow along with me. Okay. How many can you hear me? Am I on again? Okay. We heard your phone conversation. Okay, so y'all can hear me. Okay. All right. What was the role of the Wicked Witch in Dorothy and the Wizard of Oz? Let me move us on for the sake of clarity. The Wicked Witch represents the devil, and that's who's been trying to stop this message, the devil. So the Wicked Witch represents the devil. All right, let's keep moving here now. Tell me, what was the role of the good angel? What was the role of the good angel? And of course, we all know the answer to that. Dorothy's home base was abandonment. And she then got a home base of abandonment when there was a cyclone that came, and that storm came and whipped her up in the winds and caused her to leave her home, and she struggled with that and went around looking for her home from that point on, and she had to follow the yellow brick road, which indicates that she had a home base of abandonment. All right, with that in mind, the queen, the good queen, was classified as the angel. Now, I'm going to move us back on here. What was the role, if you will, of the lion? What was the lion's old self-love home base? What was the lion's old self-love home base? While you're there, what was the Tin Man's old self-love home base? Okay, so we got Dorothy, we got the lion, we got the Tin Man. Okay, let's see if we can get another one. What was the straw man's old self-love home base. Okay, now I'm gonna move as fast as y'all respond. Okay, Dorothy's home base was abandonment. The Scarecrow's home base was he was afraid, right? He struggled with courage, right? And what would you think his home base was? The Tin Man, he had a problem with his heart, right? He didn't have a heart. What do you think his home base was? All right. So don't just put the name there. Give me who you're talking about. If you're talking about the Tin Man, put Tin Man home base. If you're talking about Dorothy, put Dorothy home base so I can know. Crystal says the Tin Man's home base was worthlessness. Why? Why do you think it was worthlessness? The Straw Man's, Crystal says the Straw Man's home base was abuse. Okay. All right. So we got Dorothy's home base as abandonment. The Tin Man's home base, someone said, is worthlessness. The Lion's home base was rejection. Okay, let's look at it. If you remember the story, what happened in the story of the Wizard of Oz is that the Straw Man, he did not have courage, right? The Tin Man did not have a heart. And the Lion did not have courage. The Tin Man did not have a heart. And the Straw Man did not have what? Somebody did not have a brain. Which one was it? The Tin Man did not have a heart. The Scarecrow did not have a brain. And the Lion did not have courage. So let me see if I can put some meat on the bone. The one who had the home base of worthlessness was the Lion. Why? Because he felt worthless because he is the lion. He's the king of the jungle. He's supposed to have courage, but he did not have courage. So he felt worthless. The Tin Man, he did not have what? A heart. Why? Because his heart was not in. So consequently, he felt rejected. And the Straw Man, he felt what? Abused. Okay, now let's go further with this. Let's see if we can go further with this notion here. Now, what are you trying to get at? I'm trying to show you some things about the home base. They started out with their first greatest pain, and the queen came. Y'all remember? The queen was the good queen. And when they got there, what we see is they had to go to the wizard. Who did the wizard represent? The wizard represented God. So let me see if I can tie all this together. Every one of these characters in The Wizard of Oz, all of them, every last one of them, had a problem that started within. The Tin Man didn't have a heart, so he struggled, and he joined Dorothy in her abandonment as they followed the yellow brick road. And then the Lion, he didn't have courage because the courage was something that was within. He didn't have it, so he joined Dorothy in abandonment, and they followed the yellow brick road. And they met each other on the road. And the Straw Man comes along, and he did not have a brain. So Dorothy, the Lion, the Tin Man, and the Straw Man all had one thing in common. Everything they needed was already within them. Get this now, get this. Everything you need is already in you now. But the old self has corrupted your original self, and it's causing it to be underneath. So what you are doing is you have to awaken your original self with the new self. Okay. Now, how did they do it? They went to the wizard. Now, wizard represented all knowledge, all God. But when they got there, guess what the wizard told them? The wizard told them, everything you need is already in you now. You got to go within and awaken your original self with your new self. Now you got to understand, the devil going to do everything he can to try to stop you. But you got to understand, you got angels that works along with you, and you got to trust your journey. And that's a simple message. It's fun. We're just having some fun with the Wizard of Oz. All right, I'm going to move us on here now. Let's talk about another story that we can all relate to. Let's talk about Forrest Gump. Are y'all still with me? Let me see it. Are you still with me? Yeah, everybody's with me here. Okay. I'm just raising some questions for us. Okay, let's talk about Forrest Gump. How many of you familiar with the story of Forrest Gump? Okay, you know the story of Forrest Gump. Okay, let's talk about that story. What was Forrest Gump's old self home base? Okay, I'm gonna wait on y'all. And while we're there, I'm gonna ask you to do something else. What was Jenny's old self-love home base? Okay, I'm gonna wait. I'm waiting for some responses. Waiting for some responses. What was Forrest Gump's old self-love home base? What was Jenny's old self-love home base? Y'all remember how Forrest and Jenny experienced some things? I'm gonna bring some things to the screen so you can follow along with me. Okay. You remember Forrest Gump would run. He ran all over the country. And guess what? He met the love of his life. See the picture of the two little children? Look at Jenny's eyes. Does she look like something has hurt her? Look at Forrest Gump. Look at what happened with Jenny. She traveled all over. She was always running. She was always running. Now, what does this scene tell you? Remember, your old self-love have a purpose. It is a result of a person, a place, and a thing. Look at that house. Why do you think Jenny is crying right now? Forrest Gump and Jenny came back to that house. They walked up to the house and she fell down on the ground and started crying. Why? Because of a person, place, and a thing. What was the person? Her father. What's the place? That house. What's the thing? Herself. She had been wronged. Now look at how innocent Forrest Gump and children were as children. Look how innocent they were. Then they became adults. And I want us to just look a little further. Let's go back to Jenny, okay? Jenny and Forrest. All right, tell me something. Jeannie Barnes says, if I remember, could be rejection. Either one of the order, either one of the other, Jenny. You've been studying long enough, so I'm calling you too. One or the other. Curtis Pittman. You say, okay, Jenny's home base, Curtis Pittman says it's abuse. All right. Okay. Jerry, you said that Forrest Gump's home base is abandonment. Jenny's home base is abuse. Cora says Jenny's home base is rejection. Carl says that Jenny's home base is abuse. Forrest Gump's home base is worthlessness. Okay, now let's go and let's think about it. Remember, your old self-love home base can be found when you gravitate back to your original childhood home. And before the ages of 13, you would have developed your old self-love home base. So now let's go back. The first greatest pain that Forrest experienced, his father left him and left his mother. And the home base of abandonment existed in Forrest Gump. And if you look at it, now here's the acid test. Whatever your home base is, you are going to repeat it over and over and over again. Look at what he did. He went around the country People with the home base of abandonment will move from place to place, from city to city. They will just keep going because they are struggling with the pain of abandonment. Someone that they really love left them or abandoned them when they were a child. And so as a result of that, it drives them their entire life until they learn what their new self-love is. So Forrest Gump's home base was abandonment. All right. I think Jerry or somebody got that right, several people. All right, what was Jenny's old self-love home base? Now I'm going to take us back to Jenny's situation. I'm going to bring something to your attention. Do you see the house? That is the house that Jenny grew up in. When she grew up in that house, she grew up with her father. Her father was an alcoholic and an abusive man. Her father sexually abused Jenny. And consequently, when she came back to the house, it activated the pain of her old self-love, caused her to run the basis of her old self-love, and she fell on the ground and was crying, and Forrest Gump was there with her. And what she was struggling with, her home base is abuse. Okay, now let's talk about the first base. Now, Forrest Gump's home base is abandonment. But guess what his first base was? Whenever he experienced the pain of abandonment, he started running. He started playing ping pong. He started running. He went to the military. He went everywhere. He was trying his best to deal with the pain of abandonment. And so his worthlessness kicks in. And so he overcompensates and he controls, and he does that his entire life. Are y'all following me? All right, let's go back to Jenny. Jenny's home base is abuse. Her first base is abandonment. She had been abused by her father so much she left her home, never came back, and spent the rest of her life just going from place to place to place to place. Why? Because she was running from the pain of her abuse. She sabotaged significant relationships. She blamed them. She really loved Forrest Gump, and he loved her. And so she kept coming in and out of his life because she could not deal with the pain of her old self-love. Are y'all still with me? The screen looking like the screen is freezing up again. Everybody who can hear me, give me a tweet. Let me know if you can hear me. And so what we see now is that Forrest Gump's home base is abandonment with a first base of worthlessness. Jenny's home base is abuse with a first base of abandonment. Now, let's go quickly. Let's look at the other relationships. Excuse me. Let's look at Forrest Gump's relationship with Lieutenant Dan. Now, remember, his home base is abandonment with a first base of worthlessness. So he abandons and then he overcompensates. Guess what he does with Lieutenant Dan? He overcompensates. He does everything he can to win his relationship with Lieutenant Dan. Even to the point where when you go back to it, even to the point where when they were when Lieutenant Dan got paralyzed, guess what Forrest Gump did? He saved his life. You remember when he got wounded in the war? Guess who went and picked him up? Overcompensated. Why? Because he did not want to see his friend, his lieutenant, abandoned. So the overcompensation of his old self made him go in and risk his life and do everything he could to save Lieutenant Dan. And then when Lieutenant Dan became paralyzed, guess who took care of him? Forrest Gump. Why? Because he hates to see people abandoned, and he will overcompensate to do whatever he can to make up the difference so people won't feel abandoned. Are y'all still following me? If you're following me, let me know. I can't hear you. So it's froze up again.
I can hear you.
If you can hear me, let me know.
Yeah, I can hear you and see you.
Okay, so y'all can hear me and see me. but it looks like it's not. It's looked like it's not chatting, so I can't tell if you are responding back to me. So you still can hear me. Okay. All right. Now, look at the relationships that Forrest Gump had with Lieutenant Dan. And you remember the relationship he had with his friend Gump? I think that's why they named this whole series Forrest Gump. He did everything he could. He saved his friend. Why? Because he did not want his friend to be abandoned. He had to save him. So he went and saved him, and they made a commitment that they were going to start a restaurant after they started a shipping business, a fishing business, and they were going to create a fishing business that ultimately ended up in restaurants all over the country called Forrest Gump Restaurant. Are y'all still with me? I apologize for all of the challenges that this computer is doing here. But I got a red label on my screen that says that Facebook is changing and scheduling some things, and they're changing certain things, and that's what's been affecting this computer. Okay, so D. Bland says Forrest Gump's home base was abandonment, a worthlessness, rejection, and abuse. Okay, D, you moving pretty fast there. I'm going to slow us down because I want us to see what we are talking about here. I think you are probably absolutely right. Okay, let's get another story. How many of you watched the story Lady Sings the Blues? Y'all remember Diana Ross? She served in that role of being that jazz singer. And I want to ask you real quick, those of you who know that story, what was her Old Self-Love home base? Anybody know? What was Billy D. Washington's home base? Anybody know? Okay, I would suggest to you that if you look at that story, and I want to encourage everybody, now that you know this information, start looking at movies and stories and understanding people's old self-love home base. Now, you cannot tell people what their home base is. They have to come to that themselves. But you can be astute enough to know what people's old self-love home base, so you can have fun when you're watching movies. In Lady Sing the Blues, Diana Ross played in that role. And when she played in that role, guess what? She was sexually abused by a man when she was a young girl. So her home base became abuse. Now, what happened with Jenny? Let me back up a little bit. Jenny's home base originally was abuse. But when you experience a pain that's greater than your first greatest pain before you get to a certain age, it will bump up your home base to your first base. Let me say that again. When you experience a greater pain than your original home base, in this case, it was abandonment. I mean, abuse. It bumped it up to abandonment. So she spent her life vacillating back and forth between abandonment and abuse. Now, back to the story of Billie Holiday and Lady Sings the Blues. When you look at her story, she was sexually abused by an unscrupulous man while she was a little child. I think she was about 12, maybe 11 years old. And consequently, she then gravitated toward drugs, alcohol, and it drove her entire life. Now, Billy D. Williams' Billy D. Williams' home base was worthlessness. So what does he do? He comes and overcompensates to try to help her, to try to get her back to herself. And the whole movie is about Billie Holiday, Diana Ross serving in that role, struggling with the pain of abuse, and consequently, Billy D. Williams comes along and tries to win her and help her back while struggling with the old self-love home base of worthlessness. Well, I don't know how much time we've gone because this clock has been off. Let me give you one more story, ladies and gentlemen. How many of you ever saw the movie Antwone Fisher? Antwone Fisher, the one who played in that role is Denzel Washington, and I forget the gentleman's name who played as Antwone Fisher. And what we find is that Antwone Fisher had an old self-love home base of abuse and a first base of abandonment. And so he spent his life sabotaging every significant relationship that he had and abandoning the relationships. And consequently, that's what that story was all about. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to stop right here. And I apologize for the difficulties that we had. Maybe we'll come back to this and have some fun. I just wanted to have a little fun with us today. And I hope that it has blessed you in some form or fashion. We appreciate your presence. And we're going to stop right here. And I just want you to know that we appreciate you being on this show. And it was all about old self, new self, awakening. Amen. Let it be so.